Councilmember, do you want to just test your mic real quick to make sure it sounds all right? And I'll say the same for Director Shooter as well, if you all want to test your audio or video real quick.
How's it sound?
Sounds fine.
Thank you.
Good morning. Can you all hear me okay? Can you all hear me okay? Yeah. Okay, fantastic.
Perfect.
All right, if you need me to do anything, or we good here?
You all are good there, Director, and we might actually demote you for a little bit so we don't clutter the panel.
Totally understand.
And we'll bring you back.
Sounds good. Chairperson, great to see you. It's I am just getting into this budget, as I'm sure you are too. Look forward to talking with you. It's been a busy weekend.
See you soon.
Cheers.
All right, let's do this. Good morning. I'm Ward 1 Councilmember Nadeau, the chair of the Committee on Public Works and Operations. Today is Monday, March 27th, 2023, and I'm calling to order this meeting of the committee to conduct a budget oversight hearing for the Office of Contract and Procurement and the Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection over the Zoom platform. The time is 9:01 a.m. Today's budget hearing is for the Office of Contracting and Procurement and the Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection. The first agency on today's agenda is the Office of Contracting and Procurement. The mission of OCP is to obtain quality goods and services through a streamlined procurement process that is transparent and responsive to the needs of government agencies and the public. OCP bears an enormous task. It provides contracting and procurement services to 79 district agencies. It's also tasked with ensuring that all purchases are conducted fairly and impartially. OCP core services include the DC Supply Schedule, Purchase Card Program, the Surplus Property Disposition and Utilization Program, as well as the Learning and Certification Programs, which support ongoing development of staff proficiency and procurement service quality. OCP's FY24 proposed budget would appear to reflect a 5.4% decrease from the agency's FY23 budget, bringing the operating budget to $29,748,558. The proposed budget also includes a decrease in 18 FTEs, bringing the total to 204 full-time employees. We'll explore more of the agency's budget enhancements and cuts later on in this hearing, including the reduction in FTEs, activity changes in contractual services, the increase in surplus property, and updates on the past modernization project. The second agency on today's agenda is the Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection. DLCP was established in October 2022 as a result of the Department of Buildings Establishment Act of 2019. That act required the division of the Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs into two new agencies. The Department of Buildings now handles permitting and inspection of construction projects, housing code enforcement, and zoning administration to the Departments of Buildings. DLCP, for its part, retains the functions of DCRA that cover to protect the regulation of businesses, occupational licenses, corporations, the certification of weights and measures, and other non-construction permitting matters. Critically, DLCP is tasked with enforcement of the district's Consumer Protection Procedures Act. DLCP's proposed FY24 budget increases operating spending by 11% and capital by 23%, somewhat of a rarity in this budget year. Since this is such a new agency, I hope that it can be given sufficient room to grow and adjust the budget to suit its mission over the course of this financial plan. I look forward to hearing from our government and public witnesses today on the Offices of Contracts and Procurement and Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection. I'd now like to provide some logistical announcements for today's hearing. This hearing is being live streamed at brianneknadeau.com/committee. In order to ensure we hear from all members of the public, I ask that all witnesses stick to their allotted time. Witnesses testifying on behalf of an organization will have 5 minutes to provide oral testimony, and all other witnesses will have 3 minutes. I'd also like to provide some detailed reminders about the Zoom platform and the committee's protocols for the witnesses participating today. All witnesses participating in the webinar are currently listed as attendees in Zoom, which means your microphones are muted and your video cameras are turned off. But when it's your turn to join a panel for testimony, I'll call your name and a member of my staff will invite you to join the panel. You'll need to accept the invitation, and then when it's your turn to testify, you may unmute yourself and turn on your camera in order to do so. There will be a frame that includes a clock keeping your time. When your time is up, I kindly ask that you conclude your remarks so we can ensure that everyone has a chance to be heard. For any technical difficulties, you can send a message to Sabrine Kadi or David Many, labeled as committee staff, and they will follow up with you. Additionally, if you have any trouble gaining access to the Zoom and you have pre-registered, you can reach my team at 202-741-2111 or by emailing publicworks@dccouncil.gov, and they'll try to resolve your issue. So let's now turn to our first and only panel of witnesses for the Offices of Contracts and Procurement. Rachel Clark, Policy Director with the Redstone Global Center for Prevention and Wellness of GW School of Health, and Leah Howe, DC Good Food Purchasing Coalition. Because this is our only panel of public witnesses for the Department of Licensing, for the Office of Contracts and Procurement, if you would like to testify and you're logged into the Zoom, please use the raise hand function and my team will work to add you to the panel. Rachel Clark, you may begin when you're ready.
Good morning, Chairperson Nadeau and members and staff of the committee. I'm Rachel Clark. I'm the Policy Director at the Redstone Center at the GW School of Public Health. And the views expressed in this testimony are my own and do not necessarily reflect the views of GW. The Redstone Center works to advance evidence-based policy solutions to address the interlinked public health threats of chronic disease and climate change. We believe that procurement plays a key role in the district's goals for sustainability and health, and that the way we spend our billions of procurement dollars can further or hinder our progress on these goals. Today, I will focus my testimony on 2 topics. First, environmentally preferable products and services, or EPS, and second, green food purchasing. So starting with EPS. Over 10 years ago, the DC Council passed the Procurement Practices Reform Act of 2010, which required that the district purchase EPS, or environmentally preferable products and services, to the maximum extent practicable. Under the law, an EPS is defined as a good or service that is less harmful to human health and the environment when compared with competing goods or services that serve the same purpose. Some basic examples of EPS would be Energy Star appliances or paper products containing post-consumer recycled content. After the law was passed in 2010, OCP issued policies and sustainability specifications to implement its requirements. But after key staff left the agency, OCP stopped investing in the program and it languished as a result. Agency procurement staff were not trained on EPS requirements and were not required to seek out sustainable procurement options. By FY 2021, according to OCP's Sustainable Purchasing Report, the district's total spending on EPS was just 0.34% of total spend for that year, 1/3 of 1%. In 2021, the council passed legislation intended to bring the EPS program back to life and increase sustainable procurement across the government. The legislation requires contracts over $100,000 to include an environmental certification from DOEE demonstrating either that the procurement includes an EPS to the maximum extent practicable, or that the requirement is waived due to cost, availability, or other grounds. These requirements were intended to prevent agencies from bypassing the EPS process without justification, as they were previously doing. It also requires procurement staff to ensure that vendors follow the EPS requirements of their contracts, and that OCP incorporate EPS into training for procurement personnel. This legislation was fully funded in FY 2022 with over $300,000 in recurring funds at OCP, as well as funding and staff at DOEE. DOEE recently hired staff to implement its responsibilities under the law, but it is unclear whether OCP has directed funding toward the program as intended. We hope that OCP will provide an update on this program today and clarify whether it has continued to allocate funding in its budget for EPS implementation. I'd also like to use some of my time to discuss sustainable food procurement in particular. The food system, or the way we produce, distribute, and consume food, often gets less attention in the climate discourse, but it is a significant driver of climate change. It's estimated that the food system produces a third of global greenhouse gas emissions caused by humans. As a city, we don't produce much food directly, but we generate emissions via the food we purchase, consume, and waste. In 2021, the district took a major step toward reducing its food-related emissions by passing the Green Food Purchasing Amendment Act. This legislation, the first of its kind in the nation, requires the district to reduce GHG emissions associated with its food procurement by 25% by 2030. To achieve this objective, the law requires DOEE to establish a baseline assessment of the overall GHG emissions associated with the district's food procurement and to identify best practices for procurement to reduce these emissions. District agencies will then be required to incorporate these practices to achieve the reduction targets. This legislation was fully funded in FY 2021, including funding and staff at both DOEE and OCP. DOEE has hired an FTE and has begun the required baseline assessment. While OCP received both personal and non-personal funding, the agency has not hired staff for this program, and it is unclear whether NPS has been used. We hope that OCP will speak today to its work under this program and what funding is included in the budget for this purpose. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much. And now we'll hear from Leah Howe.
Good morning. My name is Lee Howe, and I'm the Director of Institutional Food Initiatives for DC Greens, where we work to advance health equity in the district by building a just and resilient food system. For a decade, I've advocated for policies that enable all people, especially youth, to have access to healthy and culturally appropriate foods. I'm also here today as a member of the DC Good Food Purchasing Program Coalition, a coalition of over 30 organizations in the District of Columbia committed to transforming the way public institutions purchase food to create a transparent and equitable food system. Our coalition believes that food procurement is a powerful tool to further social justice and racial equity. As you know, the district provides meals to tens of thousands of children, seniors, and vulnerable residents each year and spends over $80 million annually on food procurement. The way we spend these dollars determines the nutritional quality of the meals we serve to residents, whether our meal programs support local food businesses, and whether we are supporting fair wages for the food workers that produce these meals, among other policy implications. Food procurement, when done right, can strengthen our local and regional food supply chains, promote fair wages and benefits for food workers, and improve public health. Our coalition supports a values-based food procurement program known as the Good Food Purchasing Program that is currently being implemented in DC public schools. The GFPP is rooted in 5 core values: local economies, nutrition, valued workforce, environmental sustainability, and animal welfare. Jurisdictions implementing the GFPP have already realized benefits, including reduced carbon footprints and water use, investments in local union jobs and their local food economy, and improvements in the nutritional content of the foods that they serve. If prioritized by all district agencies, values-based procurement has the potential to transform our food system, leading to significant co-benefits for health, the environment, and our local economy. For this reason, our coalition is seeking budget enhancements to expand values-based procurement across the district government. We've submitted these requests in a letter to you and other members of the council, as well as to the record for this hearing. In my testimony, I want to touch on the investments we are seeking for OCP. First, we would like to see an expansion of in OCP's food procurement expertise and capacity. Several agencies participate in food purchasing and distribution, yet there is no centralized coordination at OCP overseeing food procurement. Furthermore, OCP does not have designated staff focused on food contracts with the expertise to improve food purchasing district-wide. This means our nutritional and quality standards vary widely from agency to agency. To improve food procurement across the government, we ask that you designate $250,000 annually to OCP to establish an Office of Food Procurement to oversee all food contracts managed by OCP. In the alternative, we ask that you appropriate $125,000 to support at least one designated FTE at OCP to oversee food purchasing. In addition to staff resources at OCP, expansion of GFPP will require additional funding for monitoring, evaluation, and technical support. To that end, we ask for $100,000 annually to support a baseline assessment, followed by annual progress assessments for the 5 agencies that purchase meals, including Department of Aging and Community Living, Department of Parks and Recreation, Department of Corrections, Department of Youth Rehabilitative Services, and the Department of Human Services. Together, these requests will promote health equity, advance racial justice, fight climate change, protect workers' rights, and strengthen local and regional economies, all through the lever of food procurement. We hope that you'll seize the opportunity to leverage the $80 million the district spends on food each year to build a resilient and equitable food system and to improve the health and welfare of DC residents. Thank you for your time today, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have and follow up.
Thank you so much. Thank you to you both. I actually do not have any questions for you, but I anticipated some of your testimony, and we have included some questions for the director later on in the hearing. So I appreciate you continuing to raise these 2 issues.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So now we are going to turn to our first and only panel of public witnesses for the Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection. McKenna Osborne, policy attorney at the Children's Law Center. Lee Wells. James Shabazz, field organizer, Organized Vendors for Economic Cooperation. Reginald Black, owner and housing advocacy director at Relauticity, I got it, Serve Your City, Ward 6 Mutual Aid. And Jeff Gilbert. If there's anyone else logged in as an attendee in the Zoom that would like to testify about the Department of Licensing, if you could please raise your hand, use the raise hand function, and my staff will work to add you to the panel so that we can get your voice in here before we move to agency testimony. Right, we are very on time today, so we have, I think, a couple of public witnesses who haven't made it here yet to join our panel. If they do join while we are still doing public witnesses, we will promote them. In the meantime, we'll begin with Lee Wells.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello, Councilmember Nadeau, committee members, and DLCP staff. My name is Lee Wells, and I am a longtime DC Ward 1 resident. I have been communicating for a while with Mrs. Lauren Lipsey in Councilmember Nadeau's office, and she has made the council member as well as her legislative staff aware of an issue with DLCP, and they asked me to speak today. Councilmember Nadeau's office, as well as other experts, including architects and lawyers, agree that there is an incorrect interpretation by DLCP of the new short-term rental law. The crux of the issue is that DLCP has told me that the short-term rental law only allows for rentals of accessory dwelling units, including English basements. The RF zones in which my home is located doesn't allow ADUs. Since I'm in the RF1 zone, when I renovated my house, DCRA required me to get a 2-family certificate of occupancy for my home and a 2-family rental license for my English basement. And this has been interpreted by DLCP as non-compliant under the short-term rental law. Clearly, it is not the intention of the law to prohibit short-term rental of English basements in some parts of the city and allow it in other parts. When I initially applied for my short-term rental license almost a year ago in April 2022, I worked with Councilmember Nadeau's office to assure my property met the qualifications for the short-term rental license. They confirmed an English basement would qualify for a short-term rental and assisted me in obtaining the license from DLCP. Beyond the help from Councilmember's office, on DLCP's short-term rental website, one of the questions is, can I rent out my English basement as a short-term rental? The answer is yes, anyone can rent out an English basement as a short-term rental, regardless of the zone and size, provided you are eligible for homestead deduction. So according to DLCP website FAQs, my English basement is compliant. While trying to get my 2-family rental license renewed, the short-term rental office served me in January of this year with an infraction and said that English basements and properties with certificates of occupancy are not eligible to do short-term rentals. At the time of renovating my home in 2018, DCRA required a 2-family flat certificate of occupancy for my English basement. My understanding from the architect of record of my home is that in RF zones of the city, DCRA and DLCP then and to this day require residents to get a C of O prior to getting a 2-family rental license if they want the option to rent out their English basements either short or long term. I looked up the definition of a 2-family rental license on DC's website, and it says 2-family rental, which shall include the rental of an English basement apartment in a single-family home where the main residence is occupied by the property owner. The RF zones cannot create accessory dwelling unit English basements through the regular ADU process. Therefore, English basements must go through the process of obtaining a 2-family flat C of O and a 2-family rental license. In talking with the short-term rental office, they stated that since I have a 2-family flat C of O, I cannot utilize my short-term rental license that I had relied on for almost a year because it is not an ADU. But as stated above, in the RF zones, ADUs are not allowed. The only option for an English basement rental is a 2-family flat C of O and a 2-family rental license. My understanding is that the council and mayor, in passing the short-term rental law, intended for short-term rentals to be allowed in portions of one's personal properties like carriage houses and English basements, as long as they were homesteaded and the space is a minority portion of their property. The interpretation of the law would affect many in Councilmember Nadeau's Ward 1, as well as other constituents in the city that live in RF zones where English basements are common. These hardworking residents rely on the short-term rental income to help supplement household income, but also need the flexibility that short-term renting allows when residents may need to use parts of their personal residence for personal use, like when friends or family visit. My English basement is an extension of my home as the law intends, and I need the flexibility that the law intended. The city derives a lot of tax dollars from short-term rentals with a nearly 16% occupancy tax, personal income tax of host earnings, and the sales taxes on what visitors spend in exploring the city, as well as supplies for short-term rentals. Since this is a meeting on the budget, it is worth noting that this interpretation of the short-term rental law would have negative consequences on the city budget. I love hosting rental guests, and it brings me great joy to share the city with others, especially families looking for a place to all be together to visit our great city. Several times I've hosted guests that are moving to the city and want to get a feel for the neighborhood before they set permanent roots, or neighbors needing guest accommodations. My short-term rental is an amenity to the neighborhood in addition to a source of income for myself and my family. Leaving out fully code compliant, safe, and welcoming short-term housing options in the RF zone surely was not the intention of the law and an oversight in the interpretation of the regulations. The intent, spirit, and letter of the law seem to contradict what various DLCP employees have shared. It seems there are a variety of opinions for this new law at DLCP since it is so new, but this needs to be clarified by the DLCP agency director in the city, especially with a law that only went into effect and enforcement this past June of 2022. The DLCP interpretation will lead to more confusion and frustration by many homeowners, yet unaware that they may have an issue. Director Kwanwi, I'm asking you to please have DLCP correctly interpret that English basements in RF zones with certificates of occupancy can rent short-term as the law clearly states and intends. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we'll hear from Reginald Black.
All right, can you hear me? All right. Good morning, Councilmember Nadeau, members of the committee, District of Columbia residents. My name is Reginald Black. I am a native Washingtonian, Ward 4 resident, the owner of Velocity, and also the Housing Advocacy Director for Service City Ward 6 Mutual Aid. We are here this morning to speak about street vending. I was introduced to what has been characterized as street vending through my time of facing housing instability and economic strife through what is now StreetSense Media. This platform allowed me to sell newspapers and supported free publishing. By rules that adhere to the desires of big business to target my population, we could not establish additional products along with the newspaper. It has greatly diminished opportunities for me to establish new products that could have brought me more customers. In this regard, Velocity is supporting the stance of organized vendors for economic cooperation. And first, that street vending should be decriminalized and that the council reissue the bill that pertains to street vending. As written, it has the potential to create unwanted monopolies and further push Black-owned vending operations out of the city. Black vendors currently don't have this great business opportunity, which is furthering endangering our youth to criminal enterprises just to make a living. This is why we are supporting that the 21-point program that has been submitted to council, to the mayor's office, to other folks around the table to really create a conversation and reimagining of street vending all across the city that repairs the harm that has been done over the years by different entities and parties. The 21-point program, in essence, is an anti-crime bill which will help spur the crime for profit notion by including Black vendors and endangered populations in the industry of street vending, in which there is the creation of a fair and impartial vendors commission, which will help guide the best steps to make sure that street vending in the District of Columbia is an effective industry, that those who are struggling financially can participate and have a better say across the city on how public space sidewalks are used. We encourage the council and other folks to take a look at the 21-point program as a way to help modify the Street Vending Decriminalization Amendment Act and to help create the Vendors Commission, which needs to be instituted in order to make sure that street vending is fair, equitable, and that it is done citywide to make sure that all vendors are able to participate in the industry. They are not locked out of certain areas in certain markets, that they have fair and free control of public space sidewalks, and that business entities are not controlling them. And we also need to recognize that street vending is a racial issue. Black vendors in the city for the last 4 to 5 decades have been marginalized, they have been criminalized, and they also have been penalized for trying to engage in legal economics. To repair the harm, we must have a vendors commission that has our previous vendors, that has our downtown vendors, that has our neighborhood vendors, that has impartial citizens who have experience with street vending. And we want to make sure that all subpopulations, including veterans, homeless, formerly homeless, returning citizens, and youth, have the opportunity to enter street vending as a way and a stepping stone to make sure that they are prospering economically, a true pathway to the middle class. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, both of you, for your testimony. Mr. Black, thank you as always for offering your voice. You know, one of the things that I really look forward to as we decriminalize street vending is also bringing forth the resources that it really deserves, you know, lifting it up as a real entrepreneurial opportunity and pathway to the middle class. And you know, that's huge. You know, decriminalizing it is the first step. So I absolutely look forward to working with you to ensure we don't perpetuate historic discrimination as we do so. Thank you. Thank you for lifting up that perspective. Mr. Wells, thank you. I know we've been working together on this for quite some time now. So I appreciate you taking the time to testify.
Thank you.
And we'll certainly be talking with the director about this issue.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the consideration.
Absolutely. All right, so we have not been joined by the other public witnesses. However, I know we have written testimony for some of them, so it may just be that the timing didn't quite work out for them. So we will go ahead and thank the public witnesses we have with us. And we will move to our government witnesses. We'll now be joined by the Chief Procurement Officer and Director of the Office of Contracting and Procurement, George Shutter. Director Shutter, before you begin your testimony, I'm going to administer an oath to you. If you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you're about to give to the Committee on Public Works and Operations is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. May begin your testimony.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning, Chairperson Nadeau and the members of the Committee on Public Works and Operations. It's my pleasure to be before you today to provide testimony on Mayor Muriel Bowser's proposed FY24 Fair Shot budget and how it supports the Office of Contracting and Procurement's OCP mission and objectives. As you well know, the district is experiencing budget shortfalls due to an array of factors requiring the district to make some tough decisions in the FY24 budget. However, I'm confident that Mayor Bowser's FY24 Fair Shot budget meets the ongoing operating needs of OCP. With our procurement portfolio expected to exceed $11 billion this year, OCP remains steadfast in providing critical services to our 79 client agencies through contracting and procurement support, the purchase card program, the surplus property, training, acquisition management, and many other functions. OCP stands with Mayor Bowser in ensuring that we are prioritizing the most critical investments within the district to offset the impact of economic uncertainties with our residents. Today, I'll highlight how the proposed FY24 budget supports the continued operations of OCP. For personnel, under the mayor's proposed budget, OCP would have a net decrease of 4 local positions. 12 positions are transferred to the DC Child and Family Services Agency local budget, as contracting and procurement duties have shifted to that agency. In addition, 2 vacant positions in support of the DC Retirement Board would be eliminated as OCP no longer supports the contracting and procurement functions of DCRB. I stand before you to attest the unwavering determination and resourcefulness of OCP in supporting the procurement operations of 79 client agencies. Despite the challenging circumstances of budget cuts and personnel, I assure you that OCP remains steadfast to its commitment to deliver quality services. Our dedication and innovative team has time and time again demonstrated the ability to adapt and thrive under pressure. Implementing strategic measures such as leveraging technology, streamlining processes, and fostering collaboration. The abilities of these employees ensure the uninterrupted functioning of our client agencies and the fulfillment of their respective missions, all while upholding the highest standards of fiscal responsibility, efficiency, and integrity for the betterment of our district. In non-personal services, OCP's non-personal services budget sees a $569,000 decrease in the FY24 proposed budget. However, this reduction includes 2 one-time spending needs that were satisfied in FY23, contract staff for warehousing operations and procurement of computers. A reduction of $172,000 was made for equipment and rental of the Strategic Logistics Center operations, and decreased in the demands of emergencies dwindled. However, OCP received a slight increase in NPS for contractual services, supplies and materials, and BOTYPE funding to support the anticipated increase in the district surplus property program. which, as I reported in our recent performance oversight hearing, generating $7 million in revenue for the district in FY22. For PASS, OCP has been at the forefront of efforts to modernize our procurement practices, infrastructure, and systems to better meet the contracting and procurement needs of the district. Over the past 6 years, OCP has taken steps to modernize the Procurement Automated Support System, PASS. The district's current technical infrastructure, which harbors the central procurement system and facilitates the core functions of the district's contracting and procurement process. Known as the PASS Cloud Project, completion of the project would facilitate an upgraded system to a cloud database from a current outdated on-premise 20-year-old PASS technology that's no longer supported by its developer, SAP Ariba. However, as I discussed with the committee during last month's FY23 performance oversight hearing, OCP and PASS team are temporarily shifted our focus from the PASS Cloud project to assist the Office of the Chief Financial Officer with the launch of the district's integrated financial system, DIFS, and continued stabilization of that system. Most recently, OCP was instrumental in ensuring that DIFS integration with PASS and the district's purchase card program. We're continuing to work closely with the DIFS team to optimize the integration between DIFS and the PASS systems. As such, I remain committed to the mayor and the CFO to fully support the stabilization of DIFS before resuming the PASS migration to the cloud. So in conclusion, Chairperson, as always, I continue to be proud of my entire OCP team, who has skillfully navigated through various challenges in recent years. They've done so while providing excellent contract and procurement support to our 79 client agencies, as well as our non-procurement services, including surplus property, support services, and warehouse operations. We are persistently working to ensure we meet the commitment set out by our OCP mission, which is to partner with vendors and district agencies to purchase quality goods and services in a timely manner and at a reasonable cost, while ensuring that all purchasing actions are conducted fairly and impartially. We're grateful for the leadership of Mayor Bowser, City Administrator Donahue, and Assistant City Administrator Parker, who have been instrumental in supporting us through the fiscal year as we plan for FY24. We also extend our appreciation to Chairperson Nadeau and the members of the Committee of Public Works and Operations for their support and for providing us with this opportunity to testify. As we move forward, OCP is committed to continuously improving and growing as an agency with the goal of better servicing the district and our residents. This concludes my prepared testimony. I'm now open to any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Okay. So this is the third budget cycle where we've gotten to work with the council office on race equity, but it is the first year that I have this committee. So I want to ask some questions that will help me better understand any racial disparities that may exist in agency operations. In your proposed FY24 budget, are there specific programs or allocations that are specifically designed to address racial or economic inequities faced by district residents? In detail, please describe how these efforts address those inequities.
There are, Chairperson. We have currently and will continue to have a DEI officer, a senior leader within the Office of Contracting and Procurement, who has developed a plan and works with our agency to ensure that we're meeting our DEI efforts. We're working with the mayor's DEI officer as well to coordinate the efforts of our agency, both this year as well as into 2024.
And any specific programs that this person has launched or?
Absolutely. We were very much focused on engagement. And for example, the last couple of months, we've engaged with the DC Black Chamber of Commerce And we have plans in the future that we can certainly share with you, Chairperson, on the other community offices within the Mayor's Office of Community Relations to engage in those venues as well.
Thank you. In your proposed FY24 budget, which reductions may burden certain communities more than others? If applicable, what strategies has your department taken to mitigate any potential adverse impacts?
I don't find any reductions as harming one community or another. That is the benefit of having a central contracting office. We are able to both work our planning and our resources to make sure that we're fairly supporting all of our 79 client agencies in all 8 wards.
All right. How much of the agency's data is collected or disaggregated by race? Are there performance or operational data points that could be collected by race that aren't currently?
We don't have, to my knowledge, Chairperson, any data points that are collected by race at the moment. We do collect data based on the current district laws and specifically around our certified business enterprises and small businesses and the resident-owned businesses in the district. So our focus is there on the current status of the law and the current engagement with businesses. And again, we do certainly focus on ensuring that we're supporting businesses in all 8 wards.
As part of the next budget season, how could community members, especially communities of color and low-income communities, be engaged or consulted to identify programming or service needs for your department?
I think in line with what we're planning to do, Chairperson, which is in engagement with the community. As I mentioned before, making sure that with our DEI plan, engaging with the Mayor's Office of various offices of community engagement, and making sure that we're both helping our residents and businesses understand the business opportunities that are coming forward through our transparency website that has contracts that have been awarded, as well as solicitations that are upcoming. So just continuing with transparency, I think, is a major effort.
Thank you. All right, so getting into the budget numbers here, I noticed there's a 7.1% reduction in local funds being used to fund the agency and an increase of 27.3% in special purpose revenue. Why is the agency increasing its reliance on SPR funds in lieu of local dollars?
That's just a shift, Chairperson, and appropriate the way, in my opinion, the way the law is set up now with the O-type funding and special purpose revenue supporting the surplus sales, both sales as well as reutilization. There are some increased costs in surplus property, particularly in the disposition of items and the cost involved in that. So I believe that the increase in the O-type funding, there's also been a commensurate increase in revenue in the O-type funding in the sales that we've had. So I would say that is appropriate both in the increased volume of surplus property sales that we're having and the increased cost that we're seeing in requiring to dispose of those assets within the law.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's a pretty big increase, and that's all from the surplus property sales?
That's correct. And, for example, we sell vehicles. You have to tow vehicles. The cost of towing has increased tremendously in our business. So that increase is commensurate with the expected increased costs of the sale and reutilization of property. And again, that revenue, chairperson, is directly funded by the sales themselves. And if it's not used, it goes right back into the general fund.
So I think we talked about this a bit in oversight and the way that you were focusing in on surplus property sales, but is this a result of that sort of change of focus? Because, all right, because I have the numbers in front of me. Let me say them out loud because the public doesn't. So there's a 27.3% increase in FY24. Between FY23 approved and FY23 actual, there was only about a 3% increase in special purpose funds. And between FY21 and actual and FY22 actual, the increase was a bit higher, around 10%, but nowhere near 27% increase.
Right. If you look at the increase in sales over the years, we had a banner year last year of 7 million in sales. There are disposed properties or disposed assets such as vehicles that do need to be moved and do need titles cleared, and there is a cost to driving those sales. My first 5 years here, chairperson, we really strive to get over $4 million in sales, and to get over 7 million last year is the culmination of a number of focuses to be able to get the understanding of assets they're coming online, getting them prepped, and getting them out on a platform to be able to sell. So going from 4 million to 7 million this last year is a big deal for us. And I think that the increased use from the result of those sales to continue with the revenue projections that we're looking at is appropriate for the district.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that we have all this in plain English because the public needs to understand it. And I think from our past conversations and oversight, I do, but let's just make sure. So in the past couple of years, you've worked really hard to dispose of property that the government is not using anymore. That's what we talk about when we say surplus, right?
That's correct. At the end of the useful life of property, and that could be including all the way to we recycle metals from computers.
Okay, and you're focusing in on the vehicles a bit here. Is what you're saying that we haven't successfully surplus vehicles for a while because of all of the red tape in disposing of a vehicle, but now we've sort of cut through some of that and we're doing a better job of it, and that's why we see more revenue?
What I'm saying, chairperson, is that we're very focused with our clients and looking ahead at what assets are being ready to be disposed of. And
I see.
We now have processes that are much more efficient in place, and we're bringing those end-of-life assets to a publicly noticed platform called GovDeals that people are able to, that any resident and any person in the world actually can go in and look at videos of the assets that we're selling. It's everything from furniture, and I'm sorry, I'm certainly not focusing on vehicles at all, but furniture to vehicles to computers, all of the products that are end of life. Certainly, if any resident is interested, they should go to the OCP website and search those items that are available.
I see. So I'm looking at GovDeals right now because this is very interesting. So can you search on here by which government is offering them? I'll have to play around later.
It's fascinating, councilperson or chairperson, but yes, you absolutely can do that.
All right. Okay. So you expect there to be a 27.3% increase in FY24, you are confident enough in that the CFO certified that as revenue.
Yes.
So, okay, so I guess we will follow that closely. And but here's the thing. So if for some reason you come under that, then we'd be looking at perhaps a reprogramming to keep your budget afloat or some other shift or cut. So it's just something to keep in mind. The reason I always ask about special purpose revenue funds is for that very reason.
Understood, Chairperson. Thank you.
Okay. In your testimony, you note there's only a net decrease of 4 local positions, but according to the budget books, it looks like there's a decrease of 18 FTEs as compared to the FY23 approved budget. Can you explain that discrepancy, please?
Absolutely. The Child Family and Services Agency last year was a client of OCP. That agency now has independent procurement authority. And so there are 12 positions that were on OCP's roles in the Schedule A that were shifted. As well, the DCRB, the Retirement Board, is an independent agency that was receiving central procurement services from OCP, and they now are providing those services themselves. So that is the 2 shift there. So it is in total, Chairperson, a decrease in 4 for OCP.
Who's the other client agency that now is independent?
CFSA with 12 positions, and DCRB, the DC Retirement Board.
With the 2 others.
Yes, and over the years, we have supported their procurement functions, and that they have independent authority. I think that ebbs and flows with their staffing.
Yeah, well, and with CFSA, there was a settlement agreement, right? So that was part of the degree, I think.
That's correct.
It appears that the vast majority, okay, I got that. All right. Do you expect any increases or decreases of overtime with these transfers?
I do not.
Okay, so then to get to the reduction of the 2 FTEs, activity 90/20 support services, that's a 40% reduction of FTEs from this activity from 5 to 3. How will that impact operations?
So overall, Chairperson, will lose 2 administrative support positions in procurement in the Strategic Logistics Center. We do have other staff that are providing that service, and they will be able to cover that. We are also broadly losing 2 analysts, data analytics for the Strategic Logistics Center, and also for the systems and performance team. Again, there are other staff that provide that function, and we'll be able to continue with those services under this budget.
Thank you. In the budget book, at the very end of the OCP chapter, it says there are 23 FTEs budgeted in other agencies but employed by OCP. For example, DHCF funds 13 FTEs at OCP, and DOES funds 4 FTEs that work for OCP. Was this the same number of FTEs working for OCP and funded by other agencies in the FY23 approved budget?
Yes, it was, Chairperson. And these are the staff that OCP works with our client agencies through MOU to specifically support those agencies.
Thank you. I see that under program 8,000 operations, there's an increase of 16.72% or $460,000 in CSG 11 and 2.71% or $19,000 in CSG 14. However, there are no additional FTEs added. Can you explain these increases?
Would you ask that one more time, Councilmember? I'm very sorry.
That's okay. I will repeat all of the references. So under program 8,000, that's operations, there's an increase of $460,000 in CSG 11 and $19,000 in CSG 14, but no additional FTEs. Can you explain the increases since these are personnel service budget?
Oh, gotcha. So this is to be able to continue contractor resources support for those functions in the agency. This includes resources in the communications team and procurement administrative support. And hearkening back to the loss of those two positions as well.
So is that all right? So would that be increases in salaries for team members?
No, that would be increases in contractor support to support the similar functions.
I see. So contractors, but through the personnel budget?
No, I thought you were, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about our contractor services, which the rates have increased slightly there.
Got it. Got it.
So we're talking about contractor services, not employee services.
Got it.
Sorry for my confusion there.
Nope, might have been mine too. Okay, so under CSG 20, supplies and materials, there's an overall increase of about $89,000. While there are cuts in this CSG, the majority of the increases come from an increase of $103,000, which is a 343% increase to activity 90/20 surplus property. So what's the reason for this major increase?
So Councilmember or Chairperson, I think
Either is fine.
Thank you. If you look at our overall budget, we are decreasing our NPS by, about $850,000. And so what you're seeing here is the adjustments to support the continued operations of the agency with their non-personal services.
Got it.
So the overall is a decrease that we're working with.
I also noticed that supplies and materials were reduced by 66%. That's about $20,000 for activity 1020, contracting procurement in the FY24 proposed budget. So that's okay. Activity 1020 / contracting and procurement. Why and how much of the approved FY23 budget's been spent for this activity?
Why and how much?
Sorry, let's try again. In activity 1020, contracting and procurement, supplies and materials were reduced by 66%, which is about $20,000. What's the reason for that? And how much have you already spent in FY23 for this line item?
So this is again, with our budget, this is a very small amount when we're looking at the adjustments, but generally this is due to our adjustments to a hybrid model of people working at home and in the office. And I'd have to get back to you on the amount that we've spent to date. But I'm sorry, it's $17,908 to date.
Thank you.
Thank my good team for that.
Yeah. I hear you. Okay. At a high level, I can see there's an 18% decrease in funding in CSG 40, which is other services and charges, and an 86% increase in funding for CSG 41, other contractual services. What's the reason for the increase in CSG 41?
What is that, Mark? Property. Yeah, so this is a shift, chairperson, in services, appropriately so, shifting to the surplus property, shifting to the strategic logistics center operations from the local budget, as we shift, for example, from emergency support back to a much more robust surplus property program. This is simply shifting resources from the local budget to the surplus property program appropriately.
And the reason for the decrease in CSG 40?
To commensurate the increase in the other side.
Okay.
We are looking to normalize our operations post-pandemic.
Thank you. All right, I just want to make sure that I am not repeating anything here. All right, so sticking with CSG 40 for a minute. There's a $150,000 increase for activity 1015, training and employee development, and $50,000 increase for activity 7020, learning and development, which had no funding in FY23. So what's the difference between the contracts or expenditures in 1015 and 720?
1015 is to right size the number of participants that can be trained in that funding amount. The increase will allow for OCP procurement staff members to receive the proper training in the fiscal year to better support our district residents. And the slight increase in 1720 is for our surplus property division staff on best practices for industry and on the ever-changing disposal property requirements.
Okay, so for the 720, the training is best practices and getting everyone up to speed on the changes and requirements. And for 1015, what kind of trainings do they do?
Procurement training. Procurement and contracting training.
Got it. So the law of the District of Columbia, best practices.
Exactly. Changes, best practices. Exactly.
Got it. Are there any major changes that have happened in the past year or so that folks need to get up to speed on?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think we spoke about a number of them. Chairperson, even our performance hearing with the nonprofit and campaign finance. So the laws in the district are they do change all the time, and a lot of things affect the four corners of the contract.
Oh, that was a test and you passed. Thank you for mentioning the Nonprofit Fairness Act. Very good job. Okay.
I did come from that community.
I know. All right. Very good. All right, so I want to make sure I'm not beating a dead horse here with the surplus property expenditure questions. So just bear with me while I think those through rather than saying them aloud, because I just definitely want to make sure we get what we need here, but also I don't hear you repeating yourself. All right, so let's try this one, just make sure that we haven't covered it yet. This is more specific to contracts under the surplus program. So we talked about CSG 40 and the reduction in expenditures for surplus property of $588,000. I see an increased surplus property expenditures under CSG 41 of $177,790. In what contracts are responsible for the increase in this activity in CSG 41?
Yep. So this is, again, it's a shift of resource supporting. The emergencies are tailoring off, and we're refocusing on the robust surplus property program. So where we would have had contract support from other funds to support, for example, the pandemic, it's most appropriate to support the surplus property program through our O-type funds, which is what they are built to do. So this is a shift in resources and a shift in focus for the surplus team from emergencies towards our traditional surplus property programs.
Got it. So you may have had federal funds in the past during the pandemic for this effort?
Emergency funds that may have been reimbursed by the federal government or other places as well.
Got it. Is there a relationship with the increase and decrease of activity 1020 across CSG 40 and 41? Sorry, 1020 contracting and procurement is the.
Yeah, only with the need for contractor resources to be able to have the laptops and equipment that they would need.
Got it. It may seem like I'm asking a lot of questions on this topic, but I figure as a new chair, I get to do that at least once. And also, if I don't completely understand it, then the public's not going to either. So it's a good exercise.
Chairperson, I totally appreciate your questions and getting into the detail. That's what I'm here for. I totally appreciate it.
So I also previously discussed the reduction of about $150,000 to activity 1020 contracting and procurement in CSG. In contrast, I see an increase for this activity of $49,000 in CSG 41. What contracts are responsible for the increase in this activity in CSG 41?
That is for our program, our training program with the George Washington University.
Oh. What program at George Washington is that?
So we have had joint certification of contracting officer certification
Right.
with university since I first got here. GW has the only law program that focuses in on public procurement law, for example. And so They do have some deep understanding of public procurement law, and we have worked with them on a joint certification program for a number of years.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And is there a relationship between, I'm sorry, we're going to skip that one. Never mind. We did that. Okay. We're going to get into some legislation funding and implementation questions, some of which came up with the public witnesses today. In 2010, the DC Council passed, as you well know, the Procurement Practices Reform Act, which directed the district to purchase environmentally preferable products and services known as EPS to the maximum extent practicable. According to OCP's most recent sustainable purchasing report, the district's total spending on EPS was just 0.34% of spending in 2021. To address this shortfall, the council passed new legislation in 2021 intended to strengthen the EPS program and increase sustainable purchasing. In the FY22 budget, council appropriated $425,000 to OCP to implement the new EPS requirements with $300,000 in recurring funds. What funding is currently designated toward implementation of the new EPS requirement?
OCP does not currently have any funding specifically towards the new EPS requirements. But we do work very closely with our client at DOE to develop and manage new requirements for the district.
So if council had put in $300 of recurring funds, does that indicate that those funds were swept?
The OCP, to my knowledge, has not received those funds.
Interesting. We will be following up with our budget office on that. How many FTEs are working on EPS at OCP?
We have one FTE that leads our efforts to help OCP's broader group, and she works very closely with our DOE team, both the contracting officers as well as the programs at DOE.
And what steps has OCP taken to implement the new EPS requirements?
So we have 14 EPS categories that we maintain product specifications for those categories. And those standard categories are then included in district terms and conditions throughout the district to implement the EPS requirements in the law, in the contracts that we award.
Those 14 categories, though, have they been around since 2010, or are those new in the new council legislation?
I'd have to get back to you, Chairperson, on if they have adjusted over the time.
Yeah, because what I'm trying to get at is not what you do in general, but what steps you've taken since the new law went into effect.
Right, and as things change in the EPS environment, that is the purpose of these clauses, so that we can adjust them centrally, working with DOE to ensure that the district is on top of the current requirements that we need to acquire under the EPS laws.
I think what would be helpful after this is if someone on your team could send over sort of a breakdown of exactly what you've been doing to implement the changes since they went into effect, which, you know, there should be something at this point. And also we will track down, if you are saying you did not receive the $425,000, then we need to find out where that went. So we will send a follow-up email with some questions.
Sounds good.
Thank you. In 2021, the district passed legislation requiring the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions associated with its food procurement by 25% by the year 2030. The legislation was fully funded in FY22, including 2 FTEs at the Office of Contract and Procurement, as well as some non-personnel funds, $100,000 one time and $75,000 recurring. What is the status of those funds? Are they included in OCP's FY 2024 budget?
The OCP has not received any funding designated for the Green Food Purchasing Amendment Act, but I believe that funding has been housed with the Department of Energy and the Environment, and which is our client, and we are supporting that agency.
I see. All right, we will look into that. So that means that you haven't filled any FTE positions?
Correct.
And what steps has OCP taken to implement the requirements of the legislation?
Engaging with DOEE as the lead, programmatically to determine what we need to do going forward. So we're supporting the program, Chairperson.
Okay. I see. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, moving on to contracting and procurement itself. For the period FY 2019 to 2022, what percentage of contracts exceeding $1 million were sole source solicitations?
I don't have that information, Chairperson, but I'm happy to get it to you.
Thank you. And for the same period, what percentage of contracts with option years were sole source solicitations?
Well, an option year wouldn't be, an option year is the unilateral right of the government to take a follow-on option period of a contract. So that's not typically sole source in nature. It's the initial award that would be sole source.
Right. So I guess it's, I guess I'm looking for like the tracking, like which started out and which continue that way. So we can, maybe you can put it in a chart to show that when you send it over. What benefits and drawbacks do you see with the Department of Small and Local Business Development's 50% certified business enterprise and small business enterprise agency spend requirement?
I think it's that is the law, councilperson, and in OCP, we make sure that we follow the law. I think that my experience broadly in working with other states and other municipalities, that having programs that focus on local businesses is obviously very positive for the local business environment. I think, as we've discussed before, we always have to think about process in areas where we just don't have the product itself. Like if we're not manufacturing cars here, but we need to buy new vehicles, you don't want to necessarily have the same process there for goods and services that clearly we should be able to acquire on the local market.
Yeah, and I know, like with certain products, as you mentioned, vehicles seem like a good one. So we do have one car dealership, but we're not going to buy all Teslas for our fleet. So I hear that. And what about other areas where you've seen a deficit of local providers, but it seems as though we could deepen the bench? I know DSLBD is charged with working on that a bit, but what have you seen over the years there, and how are we doing with that? How does it?
Well, I just think about our industry in information technology, for example, over the last 7.5 years that I've been in this chair, where the industry bench has grown, and the certified business enterprise community has grown. And I think that has been a deliberate focus of the mayor and DSLBD and OCP and the awarding of contracts to support our local and our small business programs here. And we have, in my opinion, some of the strongest local and small business laws in the country. I feel that we work very closely with DSLBD and the city administrator and the mayor's office to adjudicate those laws and to make sure that we're using our district dollars to implement those laws appropriately.
So this next question is not meant to diminish the importance of the program, just to really get at sort of what the reality of having such a robust program like ours is. Do you think that the 50% CBE requirement has led to inflated pricing for contractual services in any way?
You're mentioning a particular requirement within the law. There are many requirements within the law, including subcontract requirements and set-asides that will affect price. And I think that all policies have price. And I think if we look generally at how the law is established, where there's a 12% advantage when acquiring a product. So just factually, if you're acquiring a product that would be $100,000 on the open market and it's comes in at 111.5 from a small business, then the district is going to pay that. So inherently there is a cost to that. But inherently that is the cost of improving our local business platform.
Yeah, it reflects the values that we've set out, and it's a price that we're willing to pay. Yeah. Okay, let's look at your capital budget. In the capital appendices report, DIFS V1, the project to replace the procurement automated support system, PASS, with a new cloud system was put on hold in 2020 due to elimination of funding. The estimated funding cost is a little over 22.1 million. In August of 2022, the Office of the Inspector General released an FY22 procurement risk assessment report, which observed that the PASS system is so outdated, the agency's continued use of it puts the district at huge risk for fraud, waste, and abuse. So looking at last year's capital improvement budget, it appears that $6 million was allocated for this project. Were those funds allocated and used?
Yes.
Okay. So what were they used for?
Oh, they were used to develop and configure a cloud-based system in line with our multi-year project plan.
Okay. And what will the $4.2 million allocated in FY24 be used for?
They will allow us to continue to work with ACTO, the city administrator, and OCFO to stabilize the DIF system and maintain our current platform with PASS.
Now, if the total project will cost 22.1 million, and we're now at what, 10.2, I'm concerned about having outlaid only a small part of it without a plan to fund the rest. Can you explain the approach here?
Well, we do have a very detailed project plan to bring the project into the cloud. We are currently focused on stabilizing the diff system, and we'll reshift to moving that system to the cloud after we complete the stabilization of the diff system.
But there's no more funding in the SIP after this FY24 fiscal year. So how's that going to happen?
As I mentioned, Chairperson, that we have the funding to continue our current platform and to continue to work to stabilize the diff system.
So you'll be using both until there's more funding?
We will be maintaining the current system and continuing to work to stabilize the diff system until it's stabilized.
But essentially you need $10 million more to finish the project.
We will need to first understand the stabilization of diffs and use the resources that we currently have to stabilize diffs. And then we will need to readjust and understand how to get to the cloud from there.
Okay. Thank you for that. That is all I have for you today. Is there anything else you want to add?
That's it, Chairperson. I absolutely appreciate the time. I know from the time that the budget is dropped into our discussion this morning is very little, and look forward to continuing discussions with you.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
You too. We're now going to be joined by Shirley Kwan Wei, the Interim Director of Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection, Shannon Spence, the Budget Officer, Abakar Abdirahman, the Budget Director, and Leroy Clay, Associate Chief Financial Officer at the Office of Chief Financial Officer. All right. And I am going to have, once everybody's up, I will have everybody do their oath. Okay. Are the other two joining still, or should we? We can go ahead and move on. We don't have them in the Zoom, so.
Okay.
We'll give it a second.
Yeah.
We're doing okay on time. I just want to make sure we have everybody.
Yeah. Good morning, Madam Chair. I believe we can move forward. I do have Shannon Spence, who is our agency's budget officer.
Great. Well, then I'll ask each of you to unmute, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you are about to give to the Committee on Public Works and Operations is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Great. Director, you may begin your testimony.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair Nadeau, members of the Committee on Public Works and Operations, and committee staff. I am Shirley Kwan Hui, Interim Director of the Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection, DLCP. I am honored to testify here today on behalf of Mayor Bowser to give a high-level overview of her proposed fiscal year 2024 budget for DLCP. I would like to start by thanking Mayor Bowser for her support and leadership throughout the years and expressing my honor to serve in this important role, establishing and leading this new agency since October 1st, 2022. The mayor's strong leadership shows her dedication toward the district's residents through new and improved opportunities for everyone to thrive. I also appreciate the council's support of DLCP's work. Finally, I wanted to thank the public for their continued engagement with us and sharing their feedback for our continuous improvement. As the agency responsible for protecting the economic interests of residents, businesses, and visitors of the District of Columbia by licensing and regulating businesses, investigating and enforcing the Consumer Protection Procedures Act. DLCP supports Mayor Bowser's fiscal year 24 initiatives focusing on DC's comeback plan that includes downtown recovery and long-term economic growth, supporting the pathway to middle class, ensuring safety and life outcomes of residents, and providing core government services. Specifically, since its inception, DLCP has been proactive in improving business operation processes, strengthening internal controls, implementing new legislation, and protecting district consumers, all while providing excellent customer service. On March 24th, 2023, Mayor Bowser presented her proposed fiscal year 24 budget and financial plan to the Council of the District of Columbia as part of the district's annual budget process. The $19.7 billion fiscal year 24 Fair Shot budget builds on crucial investments that uphold the core value of excellent service, respect, equity, integrity, and accountability. And it leads efforts to strengthen service delivery and efficiency by engaging community stakeholders and partners to effectively leverage resources. DLCP also made strategic decisions to balance the increased costs with the district's reduced revenue forecast for fiscal year 24, so as to ensure operations that serve the district's residents, businesses, and visitors are not interrupted. The agency's total proposed operating budget is $41.8 million with 205 FTEs and $1 million for capital budget. The $41.8 million operating budget includes $8.9 million from local funds, $32.6 million from special purpose revenue, and $245,000 in federal payments. Compared to fiscal year 23, the local fund has an increase of 12% in the amount of $956,000, mainly due to a $1.4 million enhancements to support the operating impact of capital for the IT systems modernization capital project and other increased costs in non-personal services, NPS. The NPS increases include IT contracts for a short-term rental licensing system, ongoing maintenance and technical support of single sign-on, also known as Access DC, and the content management system. Because the district's recent revenue projections through fiscal year 26 were revised downward by $464 million, we had to make some hard decisions, which included eliminating some local vacancies that resulted in proposed reductions of 4 FTEs, representing $426,000 in local funds. 3 out of the 4 local FTE positions are the Housing Code Compliance Specialists, which are investigators who are also certified in property maintenance and the Housing Code to aid the rental housing investigation and make the proper referral to the Department of Buildings. To compensate for these positions, DLCP will train existing staff in Housing Code to expand their knowledge base to satisfy the Kennedy Street Fire Incident Review recommendation. The 4th position is a program analyst position within the Office of Enforcement. The program analyst processes and analyzes civil infractions and assists with the alternative resolutions efforts for those who have minor or non-repeat violations. We also had to reduce some local NPS, including funding for staff trainings, advertising and branding, outreach, office supplies, and to support DLCP's culture change initiative. The proposed fiscal year 24 operating budget includes a total of 205 FTEs as compared to 203 FTEs in fiscal year 23, which is a net increase of 2 FTEs. The net increase is due to an additional 10 FTEs funded by Special Purpose Revenue, SPR funds, and the reduction of 8 vacant positions, 4 in local, as previously mentioned, and 4 account managers in federal payments. The 10 additional FTEs are 6 investigators, 2 compliance specialists, an accountant, and a chief performance and compliance officer. Madam Chair, I would like to publicly share that when I accepted this important role as the interim director of DLCP, I made a commitment to listen all feedback from sister agencies, stakeholders, and the public to do my best in setting a strong foundation and propelling this agency forward. My personal background as an immigrant and a daughter of a small business owner means I certainly understand the challenges and concerns of our small business community faces, such as language barriers, limited financial resources, or lack of understanding and skill in navigating through the bureaucratic processes. By remembering my own experiences, listening to the community that we serve, and understanding their experiences, needs, concerns, and motivation, we partner with our sister agencies and accomplish various initiatives to support district residents. As a result, we are increasing economic opportunities for all. Additionally, DLCP is committed to improving racial equity by protecting vulnerable populations across all wards by licensing and regulating businesses and professionals, and providing a pathway to the middle class by helping entrepreneurs navigate the licensing process and connecting them with available resources to make their dreams a reality. From a high-level overview of the Mayor's proposed fiscal year 24 budget for DLCP, the agency will continue to perform various licensing and consumer protection functions, such as issuing business licenses, occupational and professional licenses, special events permits and vending licenses, registering corporations, investigating consumer protection complaints and conducting mediations, and inspecting weights and measures devices. In hearing the challenges that the residents face in operating a business in the district, DLCP, in partnership with the Office of the Chief Technology Officer, successfully launched the DC Business Licensing Portal to improve the ease of doing business in the district. The DC Business Licensing Portal at beta.business.dc.gov is a single place to start or maintain the customer's business with to-do checklists, estimated time of processing, estimated costs, and a personal dashboard to track progress and keep things organized. This portal prevents customers from having to navigate multiple agencies' websites to learn about licensing and compliance requirements, estimated costs, and processing timelines. In addition to this one-stop shop portal, DLCP also has ward-based account managers to help customers address the issues they face with DLCP's purview. Additionally, to help more small business owners get licensed for street and sidewalk vending, DLCP has partnered with the various offices within the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs to launch the Street and Sidewalk Vending series. The series include workshops that are tailored for the various communities interested in obtaining vending licenses to give everyone equal access to street and sidewalk vending opportunities. In addition to explaining DLCP's licensing requirements, we also include information from DC Health and the District Department of Transportation, so all the necessary information is available in one place. To ensure transparency and improve public access, DLCP has a public-facing dashboard with qualifiable metrics so that the public can understand how the new agency is achieving its mission. The dashboard, which is located on DLCP's website at dlcp.dc.gov, provides key information for the public to see the real-time number of activities, such as business licenses, enforcement activities, and number of notice of infractions being issued, in the customer service performance levels. The mayor's commitment in increasing the median household income of Black residents by $25,000 is a goal that we support because reaching the middle class provides economic stability for families for years to come. Therefore, DLCP is actively increasing opportunities for residents to participate in professional trades, including starting a small business or obtaining an occupational or professional license. In providing all residents with the opportunity to economically thrive, DLCP is increasing the share of minority-owned businesses. The agency's Small Business Resource Center, SBRC, will increase group workshops and one-on-one sessions on how to start and maintain a business and other educational and outreach activities to all wards, especially highly populated minority communities. SBRC offers free one-on-one sessions and business educational group workshops where staff provides a concierge-like service and connect them with resources they may need, such as grants or free legal assistance from nonprofit organizations. Although starting a small business is a great pathway toward achieving middle-class status, there are other ways of reaching this goal, such as through occupational and professional licensing. This also stimulates the local economy by ensuring that there is an adequate number of appropriately licensed professionals in the community to meet the district's needs. As such, DLCP is streamlining the occupational and professional license processes while improving internal controls and ensuring licensing integrity. Enhancing the licensing system, working with the board and commissions within our purview to remove burdensome barriers for licensing, and increasing outreach and education to existing and potential professionals. In addition to the previously mentioned opportunities for increasing household incomes, many homeowners are earning additional income by participating in the short-term rental market by renting spare rooms or homes. As of March 24th, 2023, DLCP has 2,725 active short-term rental licenses, 245 of which are short-term rentals and 730 are vacation rentals. These short-term rental opportunities address financial needs by having paid house guests on short-term basis. Moving on to addressing our role in protecting the safety and life outcomes of residents, we are also actively improving the ways we operate to meet market demands and progressions. Therefore, requiring homeowners to be licensed short-term hosts on the short-term rental platforms ensures the safety of homeowners and their guests because they must comply with certain requirements such as occupancy limitations, unobstructed egress from the rental property, having working smoke and carbon monoxide detectors, and having a portable fire extinguisher. Next, I would like to bring attention to DLCP's Office of Enforcement, which is responsible for investigating and enforcing non-compliant business activities, including licensing, vending, and special events, as well as weights and measures. The Office of Enforcement includes the Consumer Protection Unit, also known as CPU, consisting of a team of investigators who are dedicated to enforcing district regulations in many areas, including unfair and deceptive trade practices, unlicensed business operations, unlicensed rentals, home improvement services, and warranty claims, trash noise complaints, gas power leaf blower prohibition, and the ban of flavored tobacco and electronic smoking devices within a quarter-mile of middle and high schools. In fiscal year 24 proposed budget, we have included a total of increase of 3 investigators to ensure licensing compliance. To promote the public health, welfare, and safety of the district's most vulnerable populations, especially school-aged children, DLCP took prime action to implement the Flavored Tobacco Product Prohibition Amendment Act of 2021 that took effect on October 1st, 2022. DLCP has been actively conducting on-site compliance checks of licensed cigarette retail businesses and issuing notices of infractions, NOIs, for those in violation of the law. Since October 1st, 2022, the CPU team completed its initial compliance checks and education outreach of more than 800 cigarette retailers. As of March 24th, 2023, we have revisited more than 192 cigarette retailers located within a quarter mile of middle or high schools and issued 27 NOIs by our enforcement unit. We have also created a public-facing e-cigarette enforcement map that is on the DLCP website. This map shows the geolocation of the businesses located within a quarter mile of a middle or high school that are prohibited from selling electronic smoking devices and flavored tobacco. Consumer protection for DLCP does not stop at regulatory and licensing activities. In actively addressing the needs of residents by eliminating key amenity gaps such as food and housing across all neighborhoods, DLCP is working to pilot a mobile food vending program in Wards 7 and 8 that will provide access to fresh produce for residents. A healthy life begins with the opportunity for healthy food choices, which is why we are committing to finding creative ways to reduce the shortages of basic needs across the city. In fiscal year 24, we are working on expanding this pilot program for partnering with organizations to ensure equity and increase access to healthy food choices throughout the city. As proud as I am of all the improved programs and services that DLCP has delivered in less than 6 months of its inception, we continue to provide excellent customer service to our customers with better and more efficient systems. To further ensure consistent progress and improvements, the mayor has made significant investments in critical IT systems and infrastructure. One example is the IT Modernization Capital Project. For fiscal year 24, there's a proposed one-time enhancement of $1.4 million to support operating impact of capital. This will cover license maintenance of the new occupational and professional licensing system and technical support and maintenance of the application programming interface, also known as API. This enhancement will improve the customer experience for our stakeholders and reduce our agency staff process timeframes for new and renewal applications, as well as further improve the agency's internal controls, quality assurance, and compliance. Lastly, the API helps to facilitate communications between systems to ensure data and information exchange promptly to support agency as well as interagency operations. And Madam Chair, if you can excuse me for a second. Thank you, Madam Chair, for your patience. Although the pandemic has forced all of us to pivot in our professional and personal capacities, I am proud of DLCP's continued successes in achieving key performance indicators, also known as KPI, goals, and achieving high-level customer service ratings. My more than 2 decades of professional experiences in the private and public sectors have led me to believe that teamwork makes the dream work. Accordingly, the DLCP makes serious investments in its personal budget through its hiring and training of our staff, who report to work every day to serve our residents. Despite budgetary limitation, the fiscal year 24 budget includes over $387,000 toward training and professional development, a dedicated training coordinator, and culture change activities. This investment will be crucial as we continue to build a solid team of professionals to serve our city by implementing more improvements to make the agency more public-facing, efficient, responsive, and competent in its assigned functions. Madam Chair, as you have heard in my testimony at the agency's performance oversight hearing on February 22nd, 2023, and today, as a brand new agency, DLCPs continue to work tirelessly. I am very pleased with what we have achieved thus far, and am confident that DLCP can and will continue to make progress and become one of the district's most successful agencies. Lastly, I encourage the council to fully fund the mayor's proposed fiscal year 24 budget for the district as well as the DLCP to support our efforts to strengthen the district's economic recovery and provide a pathway toward the middle class. I look forward to continuing to work with the council and the public to move DLCP forward. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on behalf of the agency, and I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for your testimony.
You're
Here we go. So FY24 is only the second budget year for DLCP as a standalone agency. What have you learned from the past 2 quarters of operation about how DLCP operates that informs this budget proposal?
There are 2 major things that I learned from the agency operations in this past 2 quarters that helped to inform the budget decisions for this budget proposal. One is that we have a very dedicated staff in DLCP who work tirelessly to stood up this new agency while providing excellent customer service on a daily basis. We are very proud that we did not have any service interruptions during the agency split transitions and maintain over 80% of positive ratings in customer service survey from our customers. What our staff need are more efficient and effective systems and better ways that our systems communicate one another and also with the external agency systems. And that's why that in the fiscal year 24 proposed budget, there is a $1 million capital allotment for the IT systems modernization to help fund the implementation of the occupational and professional licensing OPL system. And the $1.4 million operating impact of capital for the OPL system maintenance and the application programming interface API portal technical support. The second thing is that we do need more resources to protect consumers, the consumers and the public for providing more outreach education to the communities and greater enforcement of the weights and measures on the regulatory compliance of licensing and also enforcing the Consumer Protection Procedures Act. So that's why you also see in our fiscal year proposed budget has 2 additional weights and measure code compliance specialists and 3 additional investigators for the Consumer Protection Unit under the Office of the Enforcement.
Got it. Very helpful. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Your budget chapter shows a $1.9 million increase in contracts and alignment with revenues. What's the increase in the contracting costs? What will that support?
That will be mainly because of the, I'm going to refer to my budget officer.
That's fine.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Good morning.
Yes, that would be mainly attributed to the $1.4 million enhancement for the operating of impact of capital that the director was speaking about. And there was also a net increase of $663K for net increases for maintenance and technical support for the systems that support the agency. It can also be attributed to an increase that the agency is planning to replace its corporation system, and that increase is about 1.5 million. And then there's a $296,000 increase for a single sign-on platform and SharePoint developer star contracts, and then a $48,000 increase for professional license contracts, and increase for professional licensing customer service contractors, and about $7,000 increase in transcription services and parking.
What causes that increase in maintenance and tech support needs?
I could answer this question, Madam Chair, mainly because of the increases of the cost. As many times, like when we have option year, each option years, there's a little small increase of like costs throughout the period of the contract.
And what caused the increase in revenues?
Madam Chair, can you specify which revenue you want?
Yeah, so it shows, hang on. Your budget chapter shows an increase in contracts and an alignment with revenues. So what revenues are we aligning with?
I believe that's referring to the aligning to the revenues that, you know, with the economic downturn of like the 464 million. So the strategic decisions that we have to make some cuts. And that's what I lay out in the testimony, that we did have some MPS cuts that we have. And then, you know, it's a combination of having a balanced budget, dealing with the increased costs of the contracts, as well as like anticipating the revenue where we have to make some cuts.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Is there any funding in this proposed budget for the Business and Entrepreneurship Support to Thrive Amendment Act of 2022, or the BEST Act, as we call it?
No, it does not.
If there's a portion of that legislation that you would prioritize, what would it be?
The BEST Act is a major overhaul of the licensing categories in terms of like reducing the number of categories, removing all the endorsement, and also decreasing or eliminating a lot of fees to like $99 flat fee. And also mention about waiving the licensing fees if the someone who anticipates or receive revenue less than $10,000 is a major overhaul. And it cannot be really prioritized, like, you know, certain piecemeals. So I don't have anything that I would prioritize.
Okay, so I want to return to our conversation from performance oversight on special purpose revenue. My concern is that the continued reliance on special purpose revenue to fund a majority of DLCP staff is moving things in the wrong direction. The idea of the BEST Act to me is to treat business licensing as a core function of government rather than a fee-for-service approach. I'm sure you wouldn't characterize it that way, but that's what's implied by funding licensing through fees collected, essentially. So do you agree with that approach in the BEST Act that would require moving funds toward the agency more out of general revenue?
Madam Chair, I don't have a specific position on that, but in general, I do think that there is a purpose of why there's originally in place the special purpose revenue, to make sure that the specific uses of the funds are specific and is kind of earmarked in terms of the specific functions. As you know, that a lot of these special purpose revenues are also based on the occupation and professional licensing, and they are basically going toward the operations for the independent boards and commissions, and they're the ones that who set up the rules and the regulations, and obviously also support the licensing function as well. So I think there is an important role why these things are in place. Not until I can see the BEST Act can be funded, I am concerned about the FTEs or operations can be interrupted or shortchanged. So I would like to see the BEST Act, since it's already passed, if all the funding can be appropriated. But there's one thing that I do want to mention is that the current FITs is currently underestimated because they did not account for the 2 additional FTEs that we will need for the BEST Act. And also, they also did not consider the new estimates from the IT vendors that would need to implement the law. So we're currently working with the OCFO's ORA's unit so we can update the fiscal impact.
Okay, do you know when you'll have that revised FIS?
I'm hoping that we were able to do that in the next few weeks.
Yeah, we will follow up with the OCFO on that. Obviously, it kind of needs to be within that time frame or sooner if we're going to fund it for FY24. Okay, there's a 13% increase in the occupations and professional licensure special account that's tied to licensing of special police and detectives. Does that indicate an increased demand for security related to public safety concerns?
No, it doesn't. There's no additional concern about public safety concern. And I will refer to our budget officer to look at the increase that you are specifically specify.
Yes. So Ms. Spence, that's a 13% increase in the occupations and professional licensure special account that's tied to licensing of special police and detectives. Just looking to understand what the increase is attributed to.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, one more time for me. Where are you seeing that 13% increase?
It's the occupations and professional licensure special account. It's tied to the licensing of special police and detectives. We can follow up later if that's not.
Yes, if that's okay, we'll definitely follow up with you regarding that.
Okay, great. A major top line of the proposed budget is a $3.5 million increase in contractual services, a 40% increase. What is driving that increase? Oh.
Okay, so mainly that's $1.4 million, the one-time enhancement that we spoke about for the IT.
I see.
Station. So that's really the main driver of this. And then there's also the net increase of the various different technical supports, and some of them are increases and some of the net increases, but there is an overall net increase. But there's also the some reductions on the MOU with the merchant service and so forth. There's a 1.15% of the CGov, which is our corporation's replacement. So that's also another big driver for that as well. But that's mainly on the 2 IT areas.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
This is the third budget cycle where we've gotten to work with the council office on race equity, but it's the first year that I have this committee and you all are new as well. So I'd like to ask some questions that will help me better understand any racial disparities that may exist in agency operations. In your proposed FY24 budget, are there specific programs or allocations that are designed to address racial or economic inequities faced by district residents? And if you could just describe those.
Sure. I see our whole agency are really promoting and advancing the racial equity stuff. The reason why is because, as I mentioned in my testimony, to be able to like help residents, especially Black residents, achieving the goal of advancing $25,000 for their household income. Mentioned about the occupational professional licensing, helping the small businesses. So our whole licensing departments is all about that. And then for our enforcement unit, we're also talking about addressing the racial inequities, especially in the flavored tobacco, for example, because we know that the minority communities are, disproportionately are targeted for tobacco use or flavored tobacco or menthol. So I see my whole agency able to do that. And my licensing and my enforcement unit cannot able to function if we don't have a supporting staff providing the customer service, the staff that who are doing the procurement, the staff that who are taking care of the facilities. So I see my whole agency, all our programs are really advancing this racial equity. And then the other thing is about streamlining our processes and improving our operations. And that's really driving all of that. So to say specifically which initiative or which program, I'm not sure that I'm doing it justice for all our dedicated staff here.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
How much of the agency's data is collected or disaggregated by race? And are there performance or operational data points that could be collected by race that aren't currently?
We are currently not specifically collecting this data, but that is something that, we're actually interested in doing. So then we can able to be more strategic in terms of our outreach and also seeing the areas where we can see that there's like less minorities in a certain area, or maybe less women in a certain areas for the occupational professional licensing. So then this way we can able to partner with other sister agencies to provide more training, education, or perhaps even grant opportunities to provide those opportunities for them to become licensed. So that's something that I'm very interested in doing. I love to be collaborating with Madam Chair, with you and your committee.
And do you have the capability of tracking those demographics now, or do you need more funding to do that?
We would need additional funding so that we can able to get someone in our data team. So then this way we can able to better improve in terms of the analysis, the collection, and the reporting.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. As part of the next budget season, how could community members, especially communities of color and low-income communities, be engaged or consulted to identify programming and service needs for your department?
Sure. We are very active. We have account managers and they are assigned for each ward. And they also liaison with the council, the ANCs, as well as different communities. And they also help out with customers with escalated issues. So I would be having the account managers to be more engaged with the ANCs and they also attend the ANC meetings. So we get to hear from the community from that aspect. And me as the interim director, I will be also having meetings with the BIDs as well as the councils, as well as the ANCs as well. So this is how I will be engaging the public to get more of their feedback to further improve our agency and services.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I want to take a look at staffing and Schedule A. Are all new FTEs added funded by special purpose revenue?
Yes. All 10 FTEs are proposed to be funded by SPR funds.
And you're able to add them because of an anticipated increase in SPR revenue?
No, they are not because of increase of anticipated revenue, but because there are sufficient revenue that are going to that will be certified to support these new FTEs.
Got it. So it has been certified or it's being certified?
I will refer that to our budget officer to answer this question to confirm.
Being certified.
Okay. And what, okay, so we're not seeing an anticipated increase in revenue. Your testimony indicates that the budget eliminates 3 FTEs for housing code compliance specialists. Were you planning to fill those positions soon before the vacancies were swept?
Yes.
The plan seems to be essentially we're replacing housing code specialists with housing code generalists. What other employees are going to receive that training?
So all 22 investigators that we have in the agency will be receiving this housing code training. And just to give you a little bit more background, the recommendation that from the Kennedy Street fire incident was under the was made at the time under the DCRA, where the agency was doing both investigation and inspection. And the idea was DCRA to send one person out that can do both the functions of investigation and the inspection, so they don't need to send one investigator out and then later a housing code inspector out. So this would help to kind of like save time and more convenience to the customer, so they can able to issue the NOI if violations are found. But now with the agency split with the DCRA, where the inspection function, rental housing inspection function is at DOB, DLCP is really just doing a referral service. So by providing the housing code training to our existing investigators, that I believe that's sufficient to be making a referrals to DOB.
Okay. That makes sense, but let's just talk through how it works. So if someone makes a housing code complaint and it comes to DLCP, what's the next step now with the new proposal?
So if someone is making a rental housing complaint, we will refer them to DOB directly.
Okay.
If someone is making a complaint about a unlicensed rental, that will be coming to our CP unit to investigate about the licensing. But because we do the investigation, sometimes we also see issues with the rental housing conditions that might be violation with the code. That's when the knowledge of basic knowledge of the International Code Council, the ICC training would be beneficial, because then now we can know, for example, hey, this egress is it's blocked, or like, doesn't have a fire alarm or carbon monoxide, or maybe like the door doesn't seems to be, shouldn't have been locked from the other side. So they can able to spot those issues and refer to the DOB.
But they won't be able to issue notices of infraction or any citations?
No, that's not a function of DLCP. We can able to issue citations on unlicensed businesses or maybe not compliance with the CFOs, but in terms of housing inspections, that's a DOB's function. And Madam Chair, like I mentioned in my testimony earlier, we have to make hard choices in this fiscal year 24. I mean, these cuts of these three housing specialists in local is really mainly to help balance the budget. So
Understood. Yeah, sorry, I'm just thinking through this piece a little bit more. And so just, this is more for my committee of the whole hat. Do you have any data on how long it takes once you have made a referral to DOB on a housing code violation for them to come out?
I do not have those data in front of me.
Okay. What happens? How does DLCP make that referral? What's the process for doing it?
Yeah, our is basically, you know, we communicate through emails, and we also have a KRM system, which is our customer relations management system. And we can still able to, since we are still currently sharing the same platform, we can able to refer the case to DOB as well.
Okay, moving on. You're adding 2 new code compliance specialists for weights and measures. Tell me why that's a higher priority than the housing code, and what is the purpose of it?
It's not a higher priority. Like I mentioned, that the decrease of the housing code specialists, they are funded by local funding, and we have to make the hard decisions. The weights and measures code compliance specialists are funded by SPRs, and there are over close to 8,000 devices, like weights and measures devices, and those are devices that you'll see in the gas station, like about how much gallon you have, right? Weight scales that you see in the supermarkets or even in the farmers market. Some of them can be prone to improper functioning, not working properly. Some of them can be very easily adjusted. And so by having more random proactive checks on these devices, we can better protect our consumers. So that's the reason why I wanted to propose additional inspectors in this for the weights and measures.
And what percentage of those devices can the inspectors get to in a single fiscal year?
Madam Chair, I can get back to you on that specific data.
Sure.
And also I would like to also point out that I actually have proposed 6 additional FTEs in terms of investigators funded by SPR for the Office of the Enforcement. And because we have to make the hard choices, cutting the 3 locally funded, that's why it's a net of 3 increase.
Got it. Thank you for that.
Thank you for letting me clarify this.
Yeah, sure. Weights and measures also has 157% increase in other services and charges. What other services and charges are those?
For the weights and measures?
Yeah.
And Budget Officer Shannon.
Sure. So the increases for weights and measures can mainly be attributed to the addition of the 2 FTEs, the additional FTEs in 24, and also a 22,000 increase in NPS for weights and measures, their uniforms, their memberships, and testing and outreach.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The proposed salary for the new investigators is $111,000, which is 30 to 40,000 more than some of the employees with identical positions, at least according to the Schedule A, who've been there for a long time. Why are some of those investigators still at 70 or 80,000?
So the agency actually have like 4 different levels of grade levels of investigators, 9, 11, 12, and 13. So this is mainly due to the complexity, volume of the job assignments, as well as the additional duties. So the proposed new investigators, they are all budgeted at the highest step of grade 12 and do not necessarily mean that the actual salary will be offered is at that rate. But we want to budget the highest so that we can able to recruit the best qualified candidates. So those investigators that whose salary are in the 70,000 are in grade 11. And the low 80,000 are in the lower steps of the grade 12.
Got it. Why is a new FTE needed for accounting operations?
Mainly because of the agency split. The OCFO team had to split between the 2 agencies to ensure that we have adequate support for both agencies. That's why there's a proposal of adding an additional accountant in our AFO team.
Got it. There's a proposed cut of 4 FTEs from customer service. I presume these were vacancies, but for such a customer service oriented agency, is that an area that you can afford to scale back in?
In FY23, we added 6 temporary positions for the customer service team, and they are funded by the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 at the ARPA funding. So these are one-time funding with 6 temporary positions again. So in FY24, only 2 of those positions will continue to be funded by the ARPA. So even though that we're scaling back on the number of positions from 6 to 2 in FY24, but we will not be scaling back on our quality customer service and the outreach efforts because currently these 4 temporary positions are currently vacant. So even that they eliminated, that's not impacting the services that we currently provide to the public.
Was the expectation that these were supposed to be temporarily funded? Or was the idea supposed to be that they would have received local funding when the federal funding concluded?
It was an opportunity for the agency to utilize the ARPA funding. The agency obviously, the agency would love to have the continued funding, but we understood that that was a one-time funding for the agency. And knowing that the big economic downturn of the revenue, so we are happy that we have the 2 continued resources. And so.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There was a story in the Washington City paper on March 10th that talks about how the Combat Sports Commission has basically regulated independently run pro wrestling shows out of the district. And as that article makes clear, it's no secret that professional wrestling of this sort is not as much of a combat sport as it's scripted entertainment. The actors participate in pre-planned fights, perform as referees, and in some cases as members of the audience. Many of these shows are put on by and for marginalized groups and establish a sense of belonging. Despite that, they're subject to extremely high insurance requirements, licensing fees, and a commission fee of 5% of all revenues. We've heard that the commission is vague and inconsistent in their work, and at times even demanded that the dead names of trans performers appear in official documentation. Can you talk about the services the Combat Sports Commission is supposed to be providing?
Sure. The Combat Sports Commission is they regulate the boxing, wrestling, martial arts, mixed martial arts within the district, and protects the participants and consumers by upholding district's combat sports license laws. And the commission licenses the amateur boxer, announcer, inspector, judge, manager, matchmaker, physician, professional boxer, professional kickboxer, professional mixed martial arts artist, professional wrestler, promoter, referee, second, and timekeeper. And DLCP provides the administrative support to this independent combat sports commission.
What's the justification for a percentage fee for the commission of 5% rather than a flat rate?
As I mentioned, Madam Chair, the commission is independent, and so I cannot speak on the justification. But the 5% commission fee is per DC Code 3-607. However, I do not think that a percentage fee instead of a flat fee is more. I do think that a percentage fee instead of a flat fee would be more appropriate, because each event is very different, and they also bring in revenue very different. So you might have one event that brings in a gross receipt of like over 500,000, and you might have an event that bring in only like $500 or less, or might not even make any money. So the percentage fee might make more sense. Again, I'm not speaking on behalf of the commission, but having a percentage might make sense in this case.
Why are the insurance rates they require so high for pro wrestling events?
For the commission, they actually requires two types of insurance coverage in order for an applicant to have a permit to hold a event. So one of the insurance is property damage and personal injury to the spectators, and that the amount is set and required by the facility at which the event will be held. So this insurance coverage does not set by the commission. So it's really based on the facility. So the other type of the insurance coverage that is required is the medical coverage for each contestant of the event, with the minimum of $10,000. And this is necessary to protect the contestants because injuries are common. So both my agency and the commission place a great emphasis on the physical safety of the contestants, the staff at the event, as well as the spectators of the event. So having the sufficient insurance coverage is really a benefit for all.
Do you think it's even appropriate for the same commission that regulates the actual blood sport to also be overseeing scripted performances like pro wrestling?
I don't really have a position on that, but there's a reasons why they are regulating these type of events, because again, I think it's the physical safety is the major concern here.
Thanks. The special purpose revenue fund for the commission shows a balance of about $60,000 to $70,000 over the financial plan. Is there a reason the fund needs to maintain a consistent reserve?
Sorry, Madam Chair, can you please repeat your question?
Is there a reason that the special purpose revenue fund for the commission needs to maintain a consistent reserve of funds?
Yes, there's only one special revenue that require a minimum threshold of $1,040,000. And that is for the real estate guarantee fund. And that's necessary. So then this way, if there's people suing or there's a reason why the payment needs to be made, so there's a sufficient funding for it. And I'll refer to Shannon to see if she has anything to add.
No, Director, I think you answered that perfectly.
I'm not sure we're talking about the same thing.
Okay.
The commission itself has a special purpose revenue fund. In fiscal year 23, it was certified at 69,562. This is for combat sports specifically, I should say. Okay. And then in FY24 for 79,843, and FY25 certified for 63,223, the same amount in FY26. Is there a reason that it needs to maintain a consistent reserve of funds?
Let's see. And thank you so much for clarifying that you're still that you're referring to the Combat Sports Commission. So sure. There's obviously, you know, having the reserve that is really like, you know, necessary in case that, you know, there's a situation where we need to tap into that reserve. But currently by law, there's no minimum requirements of the reserve funds that are necessary. That are required, I should say. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. In what kind of situation would they need to tap into the funds?
So, for example, let's say the Combat Sports Commission, they do have grant authority. So let's say if they can see that there's great opportunities to bring in additional events to the district, and they wanted to tap into the reserve to allow a greater amount or more number of grants opportunities to really bring in and attract more events to come to the district and contribute to the district's economic contribution, right? So that would be one example.
Great. Okay. Let's talk about street vending. So I raised as a warning at Performance Oversight that the current outreach to vendors could cause major tensions. And I can tell you, we do now have a very serious problem. I think part of the problem is that the mayor's community affairs offices seem to be leading DLCP in this outreach rather than the other way around, and having those different offices in various states of progress with their outreach has absolutely resulted in the feeling of preferential treatment for some groups. So if you're going to continue the vending series, the trainings, you really need to be clearer in communication to all vendors, because what's happening now is too disorganized. There's no question there, but I give you the opportunity to respond if you wish.
Sure, Madam Chair Nadeau. So we wanted to outreach to all wards. We wanted to outreach to all populations. We wanted to outreach to existing vendors, regardless if they are already licensed with us or not. We wanted to reach out to any potentials who wants to be licensed, but we cannot be all places all at once. So our plan was to partner with the various offices and which are agencies within with the MOCA. And we have made some good progress in terms of working with them and having every other month to have different vendor events with the street vending and sidewalk. I thank you for the opportunity for me to address this. So I will make sure that our communications are clear to all the vendors are out there. So there's no any preferred treatments to any populations or groups. It's just more like, you know, which group is ready to come ready to come apply for us. And that's going to be the first group that we will be working on. And you do not need to wait for us to outreach. Anytime, if you are watching this today, please give us a call. Please send us an email. We will be more than happy to help you. And we have never said that because we haven't done a street vending series workshop in that group, and we would not be working with a particular group. So, so if the message is not clear, I hope that I'm using this opportunity to make it clear to everyone, and we will make sure that the communications with our sister agencies that are clear to their constituents as well.
Thank you for that. I mean, what can you do as an agency to help relieve the tensions that are now there between different groups of street vendors?
Yeah, I think that the major thing is that my background was community organizing. So number one is that just be out there. So that's going to be something that we're going to be out there, going to different neighborhoods, talking to the people. Nothing beats to, like, you know, face to face to the vendors. That's how we can connect. And that's how we can collaborate and how we can able to do that. And we'll be happy to be collaborating with your office, with our sister agencies, any stakeholders, advocacy groups, so we can able to make this very clear that we're here to help everyone. And like I said, my background is an immigrant. My dad was a street vendor myself. So I'm here to help everyone, and my agency is happy to help everyone.
One of the ways that we could better collaborate is by your team providing us information when events are happening, just for starters.
Sure.
We tend to find out about them from other people.
Sure, that is something that we can change right away, Nadeau. In fact, we have one that is scheduled on April 11th.
Okay, great. And is that where's that one taking place?
So I think that one, sorry, I don't have the right in front of me right now, but I'll definitely would share that with you and the committee. And
okay. So one of the issues here that I just want to highlight is, so you have the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs hosting with you advising rather than you hosting with them advising. Why is that the way to go forward?
It's really a partnership. We have done our first event in our building, in our office, and we have invited all the MOCAs, the various agencies, and we had translation for all, like, 6 common languages. We also have sign language there as well. So instead of us going to a community where like, let's say the MOLA or like the MOPIA that who have already roots, a lot of like works that they've been doing for years in the outreach, we're partnering with them to host the events together. And so it's a partnership of hosting. It is not that those agencies are hosting and they are leading us. I think it's that, we have meetings that we all collaborate together. So it's really leveraging of all the years of hard work that they have done on the outreach and their presence in their community, so we can even be more effective and more productive in terms of outreach to the vendors.
Do you know if the April 11th meeting is going to be in community or in the office?
It's going to be in the community.
Okay, thanks. All right, so moving forward to the law, do you support the Street Vendor Advancement Amendment Act as passed at first reading?
Our main concern still remains, which is the enforcement of the street vending, where's the vendors refuse to give us their ID, we were not able to cite the citation. In Council, Madam Chair, we have mentioned about in the past about the best way to do it is to have them bring into compliance into licensing. And that's exactly what we're doing in terms of the outreach of the street vending, right? But at the same time, you know, that's still a real concern that we have.
All right, understood. But, and we've talked about this, obviously. I guess my question is, since this is the second reading is April 4th, it's likely to become law. Why are we spending so much time doing these trainings and workshops on what the old law is?
So since we are a regulatory agency, we have to go by what's the current in the law right now. So like we would have to go by, you know, what we have right now, because that's how we can able to get them the license. So, and I'm happy to see that the new law talked about like removing the background check for the vendors. That's something that I'm happy to see from happening. But currently in the current law, that is a requirement. So I cannot be selective and not enforce all the requirements at this time.
Okay. What division of the Department of Licensing will be tasked with enforcement of street vending licenses? Or is tasked with it?
Yeah, that's our CPU unit within the Office of Enforcement.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And how are they trained around cultural sensitivities?
Yeah, so we actually have a series of like language access training. So we're doing second round of language access training. And majority of our staff have already attended the first training. So so that's number one, is to make sure that we can communicate. So then we can able to do the outreach and letting them know what's in compliance and what's not in compliance, all the do's and don'ts, and how, if they are not licensed, how they can able to navigate the licensing stuff. And we also have a training academy that we are establishing. So we are purchasing licenses on a new training platform, and we'll be having some agency-specific content. This is in addition to the DCHR training, and also the ethics training, as well as the Open Meetings Act training that we in collaboration with BEGA as well. So with this new training academy, that would be one topic that we will be ensure that we will have about cultural sensitivity.
The training academy, that's specific to the compliance unit, or?
It's for the whole entire agency.
Mm-hmm. And what type of training are they getting there?
One is SOPs on the standard operating procedures. Another category would be the programs, specific training. Some of them would be like the basic program services that allow like new hires or any staff who might want to improve their cross training skill sets and knowledge, and they can able to attend. They're also going to be training on like example would be flavored tobacco, right? In terms of what the new law says and how they affect their business practices. It could be changes or additions of duties that they have to do. So that's where the centralized training academy and platform would produce.
Okay, so that's not specifically related to the cultural sensitivities that the enforcement officers would be doing.
Yeah, so we can do a cultural sensitivity training specifically. So then this way we can have that. Same thing, another example would be customer service. So as part of the customer service, there are standards that we have to meet, and also how we can able to talk to customers, and then also how to deal with de-escalated conflicts. So there's many different training that we are in the planning.
And is that a particular vendor that provides that platform?
No, we are. So we have done some market research in terms of training platforms. So we have already narrowed to one product. So we'll be just buying licenses. So then this way we can, so our staff and our dedicated training coordinator will be working with the programs to develop our agency specific training.
And that's already in the budget.
That is already currently in our budget, as well as in the FY24 proposed budget.
Okay. For the language access training, is OHR providing technical assistance after last year's report on the compliance around language access?
Yes, we had like I mentioned, we already had the first round already. So now we're in the process of the second round. So then this way we can catch any new hires or anyone who might have missed the first training.
Okay. So I'm sure it goes without mentioning, but I will just in case. It's, when I do talk about cultural sensitivity and cultural competency, I think of it as something slightly distinct from language access. Yes. I don't feel like I need to tell you that given, your upbringing, but that is certainly something that I'm always keeping an eye out for when we talk about these issues, because I really appreciate that. And like I mentioned, that would be one course that, make sure that, that's going to be part of our training academy. Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We've talked a little bit in your testimony about short-term rental. We had some testimony on this. You mentioned that we currently have about 2,700 active short-term rental licenses. How does that compare to the number of places listed before the new short-term rental rules were enforced?
We did not have the actual number of short-term rental licenses since we weren't doing licensing at that time, but but there was an estimate back in toward the end of 2019, and based on the numbers that we were able to gather during that time, it's about 7,000 to 9,000 of short-term rental that were posted, and this is pre-pandemic.
Got it. Thank you. It's a pretty big change. I've heard a lot of feedback about DLCP's interpretation of the law regarding accessory units. Because basement units in RF1 zones are not considered accessory units, owners are told they're not eligible to be short-term rentals. And I believe the chairman pushed on this, Chairman Mendelson pushed on this issue last year, and I agree with him that I think it's a misinterpretation of the law. Here's what the code says. A host may offer multiple short-term rentals at a single property, such as a bedroom and an in-law suite, subject to all applicable occupancy limits contained in Title 11, Title 12, and Title 14 of the District of Columbia Municipal Regulations. Is the use of in-law suite the problem here?
Madam Chair, this is a complicated issue because it involves different agencies and also the council's intent of the law. The council's previously raised its concerns about the housing shortages that the district is facing and the current zoning regulations of 2016 seems to have indicated such intent. However, the way that I don't think it's the way that we interpret of the law, because the zoning regulation clearly states that the accessory unit is not allowed in the RF zone. And that's in DCMR 253. And they specifically said the accessory apartments are only permitted in the R1A, R1B, R2, R3, R6 through R17 and R21. And then in R19 and R20, there's a special exception that is required. It didn't say that the RF zone allowed the accessory apartments. And in the case that where a one family converted into a flat, which is like 2 units, even if the owner is occupied one, the other one is pretty much a standalone unit. And if the council think that this is something that should be more clarified in the law, I'd be happy to comply with the law. But right now, and the law is very clearly to me and our agency that it does not allow accessory apartment in the RF zone. And there are some, I think there are also some work that we can able to do and collaborate with your committee, Madam Chair, because there's language that are not aligned, and the intent of law is not aligned between the short-term rental law and the zoning regulations. So, for example, in the short-term rental law, refer to a property, versus the zoning talk about the accessory. So in this case, does the council intend to have someone that will have a 5-unit building and one person occupy the unit and able to rent out 4 other units? But in the zoning regulations, it talked about only about 20% of the primary use of the units can able to do short-term rental. So I think that there are some work that needs to be happen, because we need to know the intent of the law, and then also working with the zoning commission to amend the law.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sighing loudly over here because there were like 12 hours of testimony on the record that created the legislative intent here, and never once did we reference ADUs or the part of the 253 and the DCMR, the zoning part of the code. The applicable part of the code is 30-20102, which doesn't reference ADUs at all. So I'm more than happy to put my lawyers together with your lawyers, but this is incredibly disappointing, because if we said it once, we said it a million times throughout the legislative process, folks should be able to rent out their English basements as short-term rentals if that's what they want to do. It was a thing that we promised to the public, and now it's not being implemented, and I don't think we were unclear about that. So let's get it organized.
Yeah, in this case, I feel like, that's not considered to be an English basement because it's legally a separate unit, and I'd be more than happy to discuss further.
Okay. Why is a new capital expenditure for a short-term rental licensing system needed at this juncture?
We did not propose any capital allotment for short-term rental licensing.
Okay. Never mind. Let's see. We had an issue brought to our attention recently related to DLCP's enforcement of tobacco products. My understanding is the BZA gave the corner shop a variance to open under the conditions that the shop be prohibited from selling tobacco and vaping related products given its proximity to a school, and then the owners have started to sell kratom and CBD products instead, which residents were told by DLCP are permitted under the variance. Are you familiar with this case?
Fortunately, I'm not familiar with this case, and I'm not aware that BCA have issued variances to the corner shops. So I think that the BCA would be best to answer this part of the question. But regarding the enforcement of the Flavor Tobacco Prohibition Act, the law prohibits the sale of the flavored tobacco and the electronic smoking devices within the 1/4 mile of the middle or high schools. So the law does not this law does not mention anything about this specifics here.
Okay. We will follow up.
Thank you.
All right. Can you talk about why DLCP is the lead agency for the mobile food pilot program?
We're the lead agency for this mobile pilot is because we license and regulate vending licenses and permits. So in this case, there are a vendor who is a nonprofit who had approached our agency and wanted to sell healthy products in the east of Anacostia River and also other cities, other part of the city as well, but they do not fit into the existing 4 different classes of the licensing category because their vehicle is too big and it does not meet the current requirements. So we wanted to help accommodate and come up with the creative solutions to do a pilot, so we can able to allow the vendor or any other organizations who might have this idea to address their vending desire, to provide, good healthy options to the district residents.
Is the pilot associated with an enhancement in the FY24 budget?
No.
Are there other agencies you're partnering with?
Yes, we will be partnering with sister agency, the DC Health and DC and DDOT as well, and those are our partner agencies for all the vending licensing needs. So anytime anybody's who are selling food, we go through the DC Health. Anybody who is vending in the public space, we also touch base with DDOT as well. And if any vendors would be using propane gas, for example, we will be working with the DC Fire EMS as well.
There are extensive food deserts in Ward 5 as well. Why is the pilot limited to Wards 7 and 8?
So we have a full intention to be at Ward 5 and also other areas as well. So like I mentioned in my testimony, we're starting off with just like 7 and 8 just to start small. And then in FY24, we have the great intention of having it all over in the different wards.
Do you have a goal of how many people or neighborhoods you want to serve with the pilot?
Not at this time right now, but we don't have a specific goal. But as part of the pilot, it requires the organization who will be interested in doing, who want to participate in this pilot, to provide us with the metrics, how they measure their performance. So I would imagine that this would be one of them. So.
And how will you analyze the program's success?
Yeah, exactly what you mentioned about how many people we serve, how many products that we sell, and also analyze, the the operating hours as well. As as many of us are working class, many of us might not have the luxury to buy groceries during the daytime, might have to be nighttime. So it'll be interesting to also see the analysis in terms of like the time of when the products are being purchased and also what type of products are being purchased. So really interested to see how this pilot goes to kind of inform our decisions.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. So I have a few other questions that are sort of a grab bag here at the end. Why does DLCP manage a contract for bid trash collection?
So we actually don't manage the contract, but we do help fund it. So what happened is that back in 2014, DCRA had agreed to help fund the Business Improvement District trash collection because there are many designated mobile roadway vending locations in that area. So this is really just helping them out in terms of trash collections operating expenses. So this is something that we've been doing kind of carry forward since that time.
Got it. So it's sort of like a legacy contract. Okay. All right. We may follow up with you to get some more understanding of that. It's understandable that there's a proposed $15,000 increase to advertising given it's a new agency. Can you talk more about your advertising strategy plans for the next budget year and how that increase will help?
Yes, certainly. One, it will be in different languages in terms of radios and also like translations services to make sure that our outreach promotional materials as well as our licensing be all translated and always updated with the most updated information. And also be interested in doing videos of like, so imagine just go to like a YouTube library. And right now I Google like, oh, how do I do the shortcut on Excel or how do I do that? Love to kind of create a YouTube library so where people can able to just like do a search and get answers to some of the licensing requirements and the compliance. So so these are some of the ideas.
Great. I see a $42,000 increase in out-of-state travel in the proposed budget. What's driving that increase?
That is because during the pandemic, we basically stopped all the traveling for training and conferences. So now that our city is open up and as well as other parts of the world and cities and a lot of conferences are coming up. So we wanted to make sure that, the training opportunities not continue to diminish and reduce. And it's so important that we need to be out there for our staff to know what the best practices are so we can bring back to the agency, and also for the commissions and board members to be out there talking to other industries, industry stakeholders and leaders to kind of bring back ideas on the when they are doing their rules and regulations for those industry trades and commissions.
Thank you. I also see an increase in membership dues. Is this for memberships to new organizations or additional staff? What memberships are they?
These memberships are for agencies. So these memberships are not individual for any of the staff. And the memberships are needed in terms of, when you have like industry trades and organizations. And that is also not only for DLCP as an agency, but also for the independent board and commissions as well in terms of membership dues.
Mm-hmm. What is the programmatic impact of eliminating the culture change initiative? I see the funding for that has been completely zeroed out.
Actually, it did not get completely zeroed out. It's actually only got reduced about 5,000, so we still have 50,750 for the culture change. So I do not anticipate a significant impact of that $5,000 reduction.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We weren't able to hear from the Children's Law Center during public witness testimony today, but we do have written testimony from McKenna Osborne, which my staff has sent over. What updates or commitments have you made since the performance oversight hearing to strengthen enforcement of beneficial owner requirements?
So we have made a commitment in terms of reaching out to the Children's Law Center to find out a little bit more about what they desire to change and what they want to change. So we have reached out to them, we had meetings with them, and they recently have sent over some suggestions of like where, and then gave us some red line on the corporation's filing form, so for us to consider. So so some of the things about adding and amending languages from the instruction form, and to include additional information. So so we're in the process of reviewing it and giving them the feedback, and so we can talk more after with them after this budget oversight hearing.
And do you plan to update your key performance indicators for FY24 to track the compliance of corporate registrations with beneficial owner disclosure?
Certainly, this is one. I'll be willing to consider this. So we're always striving for additional improvements, always welcome for additional suggestions for KPI. So this would be one that I will put out on the list for consideration.
Is there sufficient funding in this budget to improve compliance monitoring for these requirements?
Compliance for corporate registration?
Mm-hmm.
No.
And what enforcement and penalty tools do you have if someone does not comply with the beneficial owner disclosure law?
We go through the same process where our staff will refer to our CPU unit, and for them to investigate to ensure that, you know, if they are really not compliant, then the enforcement unit will be issuing the notice of infractions.
And what funding would you need to improve compliance from my prior question?
Additional staffing would be significant needed because there's a really large volume of corporate registrations, and currently in the filing, it's not that easy in the current system to able to get those information as easily, because, like, you know, it's uploaded as a PDF file. So unless we have a system with the AI can able to see the process of like doing all the corporate registration would be pretty much near to impossible. We can probably do some random check, but it might not be. But I do think that the Children's Law Center have raised the concern about specifically on certain landlords, and maybe the landlords that are not have a pattern of, like, you know, bad become a bad landlord. So those are things that maybe we can have able to collaborate with them and focus on the certain number of corporations in that way. Mm-hmm. So can combine that and not look at everything. We can randomly select everything, but we can concentrate on a specific group.
And so what part of the agency would that additional staffing be attributed to in order to do that work?
I think that it was a combination on the corporations team, because you want to make sure that we are capturing all the data in the front end on the licensing and the customer service side, and then we also need the beefing up the agency's data team. As well as the enforcement for sure, because they're going to be the one doing the investigation and also issuing the NOIs. So all those three areas will be needed.
And why is it a PDF instead of a web form?
It's currently a web form, but I think that when there's certain supporting documents are done by the PDF, so that's why.
And how will you work with your sister agency, the Department of Buildings, to empower better enforcement of housing code violations?
Yeah, we are currently working very closely already. So especially when they get like complaints on rental housing conditions, and then they also check the licensing also. And then if they see that there's a unlicensed, they definitely refer to us, and then we do the investigation. And same thing on our side, like I've mentioned, when we do our license investigation, we see housing code, we also refer to them as well. And then the other thing is that both agencies with the enforcement team, with the API gateway that I mentioned to you, we will be also sharing the data of the repeated offenders. So then both agencies can able to do like targeted approach in terms of better and more strategic enforcement.
Are you currently able to track down whether LLC, oh, never mind. You know what, I'm going to skip that one. Finally, we discussed at the performance oversight hearing the opportunity for DLCP to have grant-making authority to assist in business licensing. As we're considering that, is there a specific mission you want to fulfill in having that authority?
Yes, I think that, Madam Chair, I think that we discussed last time, we love the idea to have the grant opportunity so we can perhaps incentivize, like for example, we talked about like collecting some racial or maybe perhaps even gender data, so we can see there's a professional licensing group or categories that we see very less women or very less minority group. We can kind of do a grant, incentivize for a specific time period. We can assist them with the licensing fees. We can perhaps even help them out with the clean hands issue that might be a barrier for them to become licensed professionals. We can also help them with some training courses because those training can be very costly, and it would take, sometimes it takes years for people to save up. So anything that those things can kind of help to with the professionals, and if to start their own business, even if they want to become a professionals besides, that's going to be a tremendous help, I believe.
And are there any funds in place that could be used for grants in FY24?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
We very stretched thin as we currently is right now. We have sufficient resources for what we can do, and what we promised in FY24 at this time, but nothing additional, unfortunately.
Okay. Thank you so much. These are all the questions that I have for today, and I appreciate your responsiveness. I'd like to thank you, your team as well, for all that the agency does. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Madam Chair, and I look forward to be working with you and your team closely and other council committee members. So thank you for this opportunity, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you. I'm going to do a closing statement. You can feel free to leave. You don't have to stick around for it. Thank you so much. This concludes today's budget oversight hearing. If you've not yet submitted written testimony, please do so by emailing it to publicworks@dccouncil.gov. The record for this hearing will close at 5:30 p.m. on April 3rd, 2023. I'd like to take a moment to remind everyone that the Committee on Public Works and Operations will be holding a number of additional budget oversight hearings on the following dates. March 29th, Department of Public Works and the Department of For-Hire Vehicles. April 3rd, Office of Human Rights and the Office of the Chief Technology Officer. April 11th, the Office of Risk Management and the Office of Administrative Hearings. April 12th, Mayor's Office of Community Affairs, Mayor's Office of Veterans Affairs, Mayor's Office of Religious Affairs, and the Mayor's Office of LGBTQ Affairs. If you'd like to testify at any of the upcoming Public Works and Operation budget oversight hearings, you can sign up on my website at brianneknadeau.com/testify. The time is now 12:13 p.m. and the hearing is adjourned. Thank you.